Imagine you had an account where your investments could grow and you never paid taxes on any of the gains. It exists for Canadians, but many people never use it, and many who do don't use it properly. This is why I think the TFSA, or the Tax Free Savings Account, is Canada's greatest financial cheat code, and it's my personal favorite account. I believe the American equivalent, although slightly different, is the Roth IRA. Now, as usual, guys, a quick disclaimer: I'm not a financial advisor, so this is not financial advice. This is for educational purposes only. So, to start off, why is paying no tax so valuable? So, for those of you that don't know, when you do investments, there is what's called the capital gains tax. So, what you make from investments, the profit from it, is taxed, which is the capital gains tax. In a TFSA, every dollar is yours, which means extra compounding. So, the extra dollars you save from not having to pay tax on those dollars continues to compound for you. So, how exactly does it work? So, with a TFSA, starting at the age of 18, you're allowed to reach a certain contribution limit per year. So, essentially, you're allowed to put a certain amount of money into the TFSA every single year. I believe this current year it's 7,000, and I believe it's bumping up to 7,500 next year. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that that's the case. And you can invest in whatever you want within your TFSA. And again, any profit that you make on these investments is not taxable, so you're able to keep all of it. Now, there's one big mistake that people make when they get into investing in their TFSA. They hear tax-free savings account, and exactly that. They think it's just a savings account that you leave money in, but that is definitely not the case. It's not meant to keep cash in it alone. It's actually meant to hold investments in it, whether that be in, index funds, stocks, GICs, etc., depending on whatever you want to do and how you want to invest. So the TFSA itself isn't the investment, it's the container. So now you're probably thinking, okay, what kind of benefits can I get from using this account and not paying tax? So say, for example, if we're thinking about two different accounts, in the first account, it's one that you have outside of a TFSA that you're investing in. And then the second account, you're investing in the same thing, and that is inside the TFSA. So let's take an example of you're investing for 40 years at $250 a month. And for the sake of the argument, we'll say you're investing in the S&P 500, which has a 10% historical average return. After those 40 years, your end balance, or the total amount you'd have in that account, would be $1,398,651.85. So over these 40 years, you've personally contributed, so your $250 a month, all added up over those 40 years has led to a total contributions from you of $120,000. The interest that you've gained over these 40 years on your investments has been $1,278,651.85. So in the first account, which is the one where you invested outside of the TFSA, that 1.2-ish million, closer to 1.3 million, is going to be subject to capital gains tax. So whenever you actually take profit on these investments, you're going to be subject to paying tax for it if it's outside of a TFSA. Now, on the other side, or in the second option, if you invested inside of your TFSA, that 1.2, 1.3 million in interest, that's all yours. You don't have to pay any tax on it. When you take it out of the TFSA and you want to use it, you don't have to pay any tax on it. That's all your money. So now capital gains tax differs depending on where you are, so I won't go into too many details about that. But the real big comparison is that 1.2, 1.3 million dollars there of interest, if you did it in a TFSA, that's all yours. Nobody's going to touch it. You can keep all of it. So now you're probably thinking, okay, that sounds great. Why don't Canadians use it? So first off, a lot of people just simply don't know it exists. If you're not super into finance or you haven't had someone, introduce it to you in the first place, chances are you probably haven't stumbled upon it. And if you're young, the chances of not stumbling upon it are even higher, which is why it's so important that you learn about it and learn how to use it properly, especially at a young age. And then secondly, they think it's just an account and don't understand how to take advantage of the benefits. So say, for example, I have someone in my life who a while ago opened a TFSA, and we were chatting about it, and I was like, oh, that's great. You opened the TFSA. So it was obviously great news to hear that they had opened the TFSA, but then they said they opened the TFSA, they put money into it, and then they didn't do anything. And that is kind of a trap that people fall into, right? The account itself isn't going to do anything. The account is just the holder or the container, like I mentioned before, for your investments. So if you open a TFSA, you put money into that account, into the TFSA, and you leave it there, nothing's going to happen because you didn't invest the money, you didn't do anything with it. It's just going to sit in a different account. So that's one specific example of someone in my life that we had a chat about it, and I told them, I said, that's great, you opened your TFSA, that's awesome, you're learning about it, but if you don't actually do anything inside of the TFSA, that money's just going to sit there and it's not going to grow. So when I say the TFSA is a cheat code, you may think that means higher returns, but it actually means keeping more of your returns, which actually does mean higher returns in the end. Now, there's two common mistakes that people do when they're investing in the TFSA. The first is, like we talked about, contributing cash and not investing it. Again, I keep saying if you just put cash into a TFSA and don't put it into any investments, nothing's going to happen. It's going to stay that same dollar amount that you put in until you actually invest with that money inside of your TFSA. And then the second would be over contributing. So, as we talked about, there is a limit every single year for how much you can put into your TFSA. If you go over that limit in, say, for example, a specific calendar year or just, in general, you go over the limit, you can actually get a penalty for doing so. So it's really important to avoid doing that as well. You should use it as much as you possibly can. And, if possible, it's great to use it to its maximum capabilities, but just as long as you make sure you're not over contributing so you don't run into any issues. Now, you likely won't get many opportunities to legally pay less tax, but this is one of them. So if you're a Canadian and you're not taking advantage of the TFSA and maximizing your contribution room, you're probably making wealth building harder than it needs to be. And that's why one of my top priorities personally right now is maximizing my contributions until I hit the limit before I start investing more in areas that will be subject to capital gains tax. Yes, of course, I have investments outside of the TFSA and other accounts, but the massive bulk of my amount of investments is going towards maximizing that because I know that the returns I get in my TFSA aren't going to be subject to those capital gains tax. I'm going to keep all of that money in it. So I'm going to work towards maximizing my TFSA so that I can avoid getting taxed on that money until I hit the maximum, and then I'll start focusing on investing in other areas or other accounts. So the richest Canadians don't just focus on earning more money, they also focus on keeping more of the money that they earn. And that's why the TFSA is such a powerful tool. So if you're a Canadian and you're not familiar with the TFSA, hopefully you learned something today and you at least look into the details of the account and what it can do and how it can benefit you. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below and I'll be happy to answer them. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.